Hey, what is going on everybody, and welcome to Fantasia. For today, we're going to be jumping into another session of AFK Journey. Now today, got a little tier list for you guys. That's right, we're going to be going over the Graveborn units in the arena setting. Now, before we begin, this video is actually sponsored by AFK Journey, and if you watch until the end of the video, I actually got a little treat for you guys in the form of a redemption code in which you can get some diamonds and gold. But without any further ado, let's go ahead and jump right into it. So we're going to be going through every single Graveborn unit in the arena setting. I will be going over some of the Graveborn units in other settings as well, but for right now we're just focusing solely on arena. Now, starting off, of course, we have to have our favorite undead Poseidon, Thoron. Now, Thoron is actually the best frontline unit for arena, hands down. He's the best tank to have here because he has multiple lives, so when he goes down the first time, he will revive himself, which makes him a great counter to certain team comps in arena. Now, his damage reflection can also be huge. It can turn the tide of a match, and because you're fighting a bunch of units, unlike in general map progression where you might be fighting random monsters or mobs, because you're fighting other units that other players own and have set up, they tend to have pretty high damage output, which means that it's better for Thoron. You get to absorb all that damage and revenge damage them back by throwing it right back at them. And he's also just really solid for protecting your backline units. Overall, Thoron is an S tier unit. Next up on our list is Carolina. Now, Carolina is a pretty fascinating unit. She's essentially like tailor-made for the arena mode because of what she does. Now, getting into it here, she actually has a lot of AoE damage. She is also a pretty good single target crowd control unit. She also applies an AoE slow debuff to the enemy team. And namely, she actually targets the backline units and reduces their magic defense so that she can deal more damage as a mage. So you can actually pair her up with a couple of great partners. She pairs well with a bunch of thieves, such as Sylvina, which we'll get to later, and Seth as well, for some quick kills, right? You start targeting the backline, you make them more vulnerable, and then boom, your assassins come in and finish the job. You can also pair her up with Aaron for some AoE crowd control and damage. So overall, Carolina is pretty solid in arena. She's gonna get an A tier from me. Next up, we have Eigor. Now, Eigor was one of the units that I really wanted for the longest time, and it's because he is absolutely insane in arena. He is super annoying, and if you don't have him, you probably found him somewhere doing the map progression or fighting him in arena or something of the sort. He just jumps around a lot, and he's capable of tanking large amounts of damage as well because he is just super annoying and super mobile. Now, he actually possesses a huge threat to backline units, and he is a warrior, so it's kind of interesting. But he is countered specifically by units like Odie, who can kind of crowd control him a little bit and kind of keep him down. But due to being a Graveborn unit, his overall performance is just really strong and solid. He is super annoying, jumps around, deals tons of damage, and because of his survivability, you actually don't need a whole ton of support for him. He is just an overall great unit, and I'll easily put him up there with Thoron in the S tier. Next up is a unit that you guys have seen a ton on my channel, Caia. Now, in arena, she's actually not the best unit to be using as a damage dealer. There are better options out there, but Caia in arena is okay. She actually kind of performs more like a mage than she does a marksman, even though that is her class. Now, marksmen are typically the strongest DPSs in the game for the ranged abilities and concentrated damage output. Now, Caia, unfortunately, kind of relies a little bit too much on her ultimate to deal damage, which is summons that ad that comes in and starts attacking things, right? Sometimes it could take aggro from things things as well, which is kind of nice. But because of that ramp up time, you kind of need to make sure that she's either over leveled and kind of stronger than other DPS units to be able to use her effectively, or you can just kind of pass up on her in general. But she is easily put in the B tier for me. Alright guys, next up we have Nero. Now Nero is actually pretty interesting because he is unique in that he has a revive mechanic. He can place this little marker on top of one of your allies with his ultimate proc, and you can essentially revive them, kind of like how Thor revives himself after he dies once in battle, which is pretty cool. Now there just aren't that many practical applications of that revive mechanic as of right now in the game, so it's not really fantastic unless you're doing some combo of like reviving a healer and then using that healer to keep himself sustained and keeping the team healthy. It's really niche cases, so yeah, when you're looking at Nero in Arena, he's alright, and he doesn't really have like the most amazing healing output either, but there are better options out there. You can just go for like Eigor, like I mentioned earlier, who's a great self-sustaining damage dealer out there that can be really annoying, or you can even go for a unit like Damien. Overall, unfortunately, Nero is gonna fall into the C tier for me. Alright, next up we're going to talk about one of my favorite Graveborn units here in terms of design, Sylvina. So Sylvina is really strong, but she is more of a jump in there and get yourself killed type of unit, more than an assassin who kind of stays alive and evades and usually sustains himself throughout the fight. She literally just goes in there into the back line and tries to take out a unit as soon as possible. Her kit is actually really good for PvP though. So at the start of the match, Sylvina usually just jumps into the backline, teleports there, and starts dealing a lot of damage to a single target. She has some pretty good single target crowd control and a heal block, which is kind of nice because you don't want that unit to get healed if you're trying to take them down. She also possesses a good amount of threat against squishier units, so usually AoE units like rangers, like marksmen, and mages are going to be in the back line, and she is a great unit for just targeting those down. If you want to get the most out of her while maintaining a Graveborn team, it's highly recommended that you use Sylvina with Carolina because of that synergy that we mentioned earlier during her review. You can also use her with Seth as well. Seth and Sylvina will both be able to deal massive amounts of damage to units in the backlines and take them out very easily. So overall, Sylvina in the arena mode, she is gonna get an A from me. Very high risk and very high reward. So next up we have Salzer. Salzer is actually a pretty interesting unit because he doesn't really excel too much at any one thing, but he does end up having some decent crowd control capabilities in the current version of the game. So in Arena, when you're going for him, if you're going to be using him, you can actually pair him up with Carolina because both of them together actually do a little bit of synergy to kind of suppress the opponents, and you can actually get a 5-second hard crowd control if you can pull it off, but he's not very consistent. I think that's his major downfall. Every time I tried to use him, he just never really performed all that well. So unfortunately, he's gonna fall into the B tier for me. And last but not least, we have Viperion. Now Viperion is a mage and he does damage, and boy does he do a lot of it. So he's actually capable of doing lots of AoE damage, and he can target enemy backlines pretty easily, making him pretty good for PvP, which is great for us because we're talking about Arena. So Viperion is actually a very fast damage dealer for a mage. He doesn't really have this kind of warm-up time that other mages require, so he is just jumping into the action, spitting out AoE damage and AoE debuffs, and he is a pretty big threat to backline units. So He is actually really good paired up with units like Hewin and Rowan. Now, I like to use Rowan a lot with Viperion. Rowan essentially uses his ultimate to charge up other people's ultimates on your team, so you can pop Viperion's damage consistently and repeatedly throughout the course of a battle. And so with that being said, Viperion's consistency and damage lands him in the solid A tier from me. So that is gonna do it from me for this Graveborn tier list. Here's a summary of my placements of every unit here on the screen for you guys to see. But if you agree or if you disagree, let me know in the comments section down below. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this matter, especially because the Graveborn are my favorite faction of heroes. Now, before I end this video off, I am going to give you guys a redemption code that you can use to get some diamonds and gold. The redemption code to use is AFK Journey Creator. Now be careful and make sure you capitalize the letters correctly, otherwise you won't be able to get the rewards when you go to redeem. Now you only have from March 27th until May 26th to get these rewards using this code, so be sure to get it while you can. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Take care.